good evening all and welcome. Sorry for being away. If you want to find out why, you can listen in about that at the end. Tonight I had something a little different planned. AI generated scary stories. Now none of them are true, but I really thought it would be fun to see what it would be like to have AI generate stories. Do they sound believable? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. We actually did a live stream where we covered AI invented some stories, not particularly scary ones, and it was really fun, so I thought I'd give this a try. Let me know what you thought down below, but for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. The woods of Rotonga were supposed to be a peaceful getaway, a chance to escape the stress and noise of the city. So when my boyfriend and I decided to go camping there for the weekend, we were looking forward to a relaxing time. We arrived at the park in the early afternoon, and after checking in with the park ranger, we set off on the trail to find the perfect spot for our tent. The woods were quiet and serene, the only sounds the occasional bird call or rustling of leaves in the wind. It was exactly what we needed to unwind. After a short hike, we found a secluded clearing and started setting up camp. My boyfriend was an experienced camper, so we quickly had our tent erected and our sleeping bags unrolled. We gathered firewood and set up a ring of stones for a campfire, planning to cook our dinner over an open flame. As the sun started to dip below the trees, we lit the fire and settled in for the night. We roasted hot dogs and marshmallows and talked about our plans for the future. It was a perfect evening, the kind that you remember for years to come. But just as we were drifting off to sleep, we heard a rustling outside our camp. At first we thought it might be a curious animal or a passing hiker, but then we heard the sound of voices, angry, slurred voices that sounded like they belonged to a group of drunk men. My boyfriend tried to calm me down, telling me that they would probably just pass out without incident, but I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. We huddled together in our tent, listening as the voices grew louder and louder. And then as they were upon us, a group of 3 men stumbled into our camp, their eyes bloodshot and their breath reeking of alcohol. They were loud and aggressive, demanding to know what we were doing there and why we had set up camp in their territory. My boyfriend tried to reason with them, telling them that we meant no harm and just wanted to enjoy a peaceful weekend in the woods. But the men were having none of it. They started to circle around us, making lewd comments and brandishing makeshift weapons. I could feel my fear turning into anger as they continued to taunt and threaten us. My boyfriend and I stood back to back, ready to defend ourselves if we had to, but we were outnumbered, and the men were getting more and more violent. One of them swung a heavy branch at my boyfriend, knocking him to the ground. I tried to help him up, but another man grabbed me by the hair and pulled me back. I screamed, fighting against him as he dragged me away from my boyfriend. I don't remember much after that. It all happened so fast. I remember the sound of breaking branches and the stinging pain of being hit repeatedly. I remember my boyfriend's voice calling out my name, and then everything went black. When I came to, it was morning, and the sun was shining through the trees. I was lying on the ground, bruised and battered but alive. My boyfriend was nowhere to be seen. I called out his name, but there was no response. I stumbled through the woods, looking for any sign of him. And then I saw it, a pile of leaves matted with blood. I knew that was him. As I lay there sobbing, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. The police had arrived. They found me and took me to the hospital, where I received treatment for my injuries and was interviewed about what happened. Over the next few weeks, the police conducted a thorough investigation. They searched the woods for any clues or evidence and questioned anyone who may have been in the area at the time of the attack. It was a grueling process, but eventually they were able to identify the 3 men responsible for my boyfriend's death. They were arrested and charged with murder, and the case went to trial. I was called to testify, reliving the horrific events of that night in front of a packed courtroom. It was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do, but I knew I had to do it for my boyfriend. In the end, the 3 men were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. It was some small consolation for the loss of my boyfriend, but it provided a sense of closure that I desperately needed. The woods of Rotonga still exist, and I know that some people still go there to camp and hike, but for me, it will always be a place of heartbreak and tragedy, a place where the peaceful tranquility was shattered by the senseless violence of 3 drunken men. My name is Ulysses, and I'm what you might call an urban explorer. I love nothing more than venturing into abandoned buildings, seeking out hidden corners and forgotten treasures. And so when I heard about an old, decaying building in Colorado, I knew I had to see it for myself. The place was a wreck. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and the floors creaked ominously beneath my feet. But I was undeterred. With my trusty flashlight in hand, I began to explore. As I made my way through the dark and musty halls, I heard a strange noise. It sounded like someone whispering my name. I shook my head, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then I heard it again, louder this time. Ulysses. I turned around, shining my flashlight into the shadows, but there was no one there. I was alone. I shrugged it off and continued on my way. I was determined to find something interesting, something that would make the trip worthwhile. That's when it happened. I was climbing up a set of rickety stairs. My flashlight barely illuminated the way, when the steps suddenly gave way beneath me. I fell, tumbling down what felt like an endless flight of stairs. When I came to, I was lying on the ground, my body battered and bruised. I had no idea how long I'd been out, but I knew I needed to get out of there before something worse happened. I struggled to my feet and began to make my way back towards the entrance. But as I stumbled through the dark and dusty halls, I realized that I was lost. I had no idea which way to go. And that's when I heard the voice again. This time it was closer, more insistent. Ulysses. I turned around, shining my flashlight into the darkness. That's when I saw it. A pair of glowing red eyes stared back at me, my heart pounding in my chest. I began to run. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew I had to get out of there. The eyes followed me, watching my every move. I continued to move forwards, every step feeling like it could be my last. I could feel the pressure of the eyes getting closer, as if whatever was watching me was closing in on the kill. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash from behind me. I whipped around to see a section of the floor collapse, sending debris tumbling down into the darkness below. A realization hit me like a ton of bricks. If I hadn't have moved when I did, I would have been standing on that exact spot when the floor gave way. With a renewed sense of urgency, I pressed on, the eyes still following my every move. But as I rounded a corner, I was met with a sight that made my blood run cold. There, blocking my path, was a figure that seemed to materialize out of the shadows themselves. It was a tall, thin creature, with long arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its skin was a sickly pale color, stretched tightly over its bones. But the worst part was its eyes. They glowed with an otherworldly light, fixed on me with a hunger that sent shivers down my spine. I froze, unable to move, as the creature slowly advanced towards me. But then, something snapped inside me. I had come too far to let this thing take me down. With a scream of defiance, I charged forwards, my hand lashing out at the creature's face. To my surprise, my hands made contact, and I felt the creature's skin give way beneath my fingers. It let out a piercing shriek, stumbled back in shock, and I took my chance and bolted past it, running as fast as I could to the exit. The journey back up the stairs were a blur, my heart pounding in my chest as I sprinted towards the light of day. But when I finally burst out into the sunshine, I felt like I had been given a new lease on life. The cool breeze on my face and the sound of birds singing in the trees felt like a miracle after the horror I had just experienced. Looking back on that day, I can hardly believe I made it out alive, but I know that I owe my survival to something deep within me, a primal will that refused to let me give up, even in the face of unimaginable terror. I'd heard the rumors. Whispers passed among the staff and patients alike, like an unspoken truth that hung heavy in the air. They spoke of a presence that lingered within the dimly lit corridors of the old hospital, a ghostly spectre that haunted the very foundation of its existence. I scoffed at the tales, dismissing them as mere superstitions born out of the long hours and eerie atmosphere that permeated the sterile walls. But that was before I experienced it firsthand. Late one night, as the hospital settled into an unsettling silence, I found myself assigned to the graveyard shift. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows along the hallway as I made my rounds, the emptiness of the hospital magnified in the absence of bustling activity. The silence pressed against my eardrums, creating a sensation of isolation that sent a chill down my spine. As I walked past closed doors and vacant rooms, a cold breeze brushed against my cheek, raising goosebumps on my skin. A shiver ran down my spine, and I quickened my pace, eager to escape the suffocating grip of the hospital's ghostly tales. But as I turned the corner, a figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette draped in tattered hospital attire. My heart raced as I recognized the unmistakable presence of a ghostly apparition. It stared at me with hollow eyes, an ethereal glow emanating from its translucent form. Panic seized me, rendering me immobile, my voice trapped in my throat. The ghostly figure moved closer, its steps silent, yet I could hear its labored breathing, like a whisper on the edge of my consciousness. The air grew heavy, suffused with an otherworldly energy that permeated every inch of the hallway. I tried to retreat, to escape the clutches of this spectral entity, but it was as if an invisible force held me in place. The ghost extended a pale, translucent hand towards me, its touch icy against my skin. I could feel a surge of dread coursing through my veins, a primal fear that defied explanation. Images flashed before my eyes, vivid and haunting. I glimpsed scenes of suffering and despair, of lives cut short and pain left unresolved. It was as if the ghost sought to share its own tormented existence, to impress upon me the weight of its unfinished business. Time seemed to stand still as I stood face to face with this ethereal being, caught between the realms of the living and the dead. I could sense its desperation, its yearning for closure and release from the confines of the hospital walls. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the ghost vanished, leaving behind only an echo of its presence. The air grew still once more, the hallway returning to its desolate state, as if the encounter had been a figment of my imagination. But the memory lingered, etched into my mind like a haunting refrain. The ghost's message, though unspoken, had been clear. It longed for peace, for its spirit to find solace beyond the hospital's confines. From that night on, I carried the weight of that encounter, a reminder that the supernatural can weave its way into our reality, reminding us of the thin veil that separates the living from the dead. The hospital's halls held more secrets than any medical chart could convey, and its ghostly inhabitant continued to roam, a spectre caught in an eternal dance between the realms of the living and the departed. I had been a priest for many years, dedicating to serving my congregation and offering spiritual guidance to those in need. However, nothing in my years of training and ministry could have prepared me for the horror that I was about to witness. It was a dark and chilling chapter of my life that would forever be etched into my memory. The call came unexpectedly, piercing through the quiet solitude of my study. A tremor of urgency and distress permeated the voice on the other end of the line. It was a desperate plea from a shattered family grappling with an unimaginable affliction. Their teenage daughter, once vibrant and full of life, had become a vessel for something sinister, something beyond their comprehension. The family believed she was ensnared in the clutches of a demonic entity, and they implored me to perform an exorcism, their last glimmer of hope in a seemingly endless situation. I could sense the gravity of the situation as I listened to the family's anguish-filled accounts. They described weeks of unnerving behavior, marked by inexplicable changes in their daughter's demeanor. She spoke with an otherworldly voice, her actions becoming increasingly bizarre and alarming. Despite seeking help from medical professionals and mental health experts, no earthly diagnosis or treatment could explain the darkness that had taken root within her. The family's desperation propelled them to seek divine intervention, and I, as their spiritual guide, felt compelled to offer my assistance. With a heavy heart and a resolute spirit, I made my way to their home, shrouded in an air of trepidation as the door creaked open. I was greeted by the worn faces of the parents, their eyes clouded with fear and exhaustion, and there, standing before them, was their daughter, a mere shadow of her former self. Her once rosy complexion had faded to an eerie pallor, and her eyes bore the weight of an unfathomable torment. After exchanging somber greetings, we gathered in a room permeated with the sense of foreboding. Candles flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls as we prepared for the harrowing task that lay ahead. I took a moment to pray, to beseech the divine for strength and protection as I embarked on this perilous journey. As the ritual began, I called upon the divine power, fervently reciting prayers that had echoed through centuries of spiritual warfare. But in the initial moments, there was no discernible response. The girl remained seated, seemingly untouched by the sacred incantations and the holy water I carefully administered. Doubt whispered in the recesses of my mind, but I banished it, knowing that steadfast faith and unwavering determination were my weapons in this battle against the forces of darkness. Then, as if triggered by an invisible switch, the atmosphere shifted. The girl's eyes rolled back, exposing only the whites, while her body contorted with a grotesque grace that defied the laws of nature. From her trembling lips emerged a voice that belonged to a world far removed from our own, a voice laced with malevolence, dripping with icy venom of malevolent intent that had taken a hold of her. Undeterred, I confronted the presence with unyielding resolve, locked in a battle of spiritual strength. The demon hissed and sneered, its words veiled in an incomprehensible language, taunting me with threats of harm and invoking unspeakable horrors. But I refused to succumb to fear. Clutching my crucifix, I intensified my prayers, invoking the divine light to pierce through the darkness. The room transformed into a battleground as the battle intensified. Inanimate objects were sent hurtling across the room, propelled by an unseen force, while the temperature plunged to bone-chilling depths. Yet amidst the chaos and turmoil, my faith burned unwaveringly. Hours stretched into an eternity as the struggle waged on, each passing moment amplifying the weight of the spiritual clash. I continued to beseech divine intervention, my voice unwavering, my spirit unyielding. The demon fought back with every ounce of its malevolence, but I knew that I couldn't falter. The stakes were too high, and the girl's soul hung in the balance. And then, as if a celestial symphony had reached its crescendo, a final surge of divine power surged through me. The demon's grip weakened, its hold on the girl's fragile form loosening. In one final act of defiance, it released its tenuous hold, vanquished by the unwavering strength of faith. The girl slumped forward, her trembling body drained of vitality. She was physically exhausted, but a glimmer of serenity had returned to her countenance. The room, once engulfed in a maelstrom of supernatural activity, now settled into an eerie calm. Taking a moment to catch my breath and steady my trembling hands, I approached the girl, my heart brimming with a mix of relief and compassion. I performed and concluded prayers, invoking divine blessings upon her wounded soul, praying that she would find solace and healing after the ordeal she endured. The family, their eyes welled with tears, surrounded their daughter, their voice a chorus of gratitude and overwhelming emotion. They thanked me profusely, their words carrying the weight of profound gratitude for the role I had played in their lives, but I humbly redirected their appreciation to the divine, acknowledging that I was merely an instrument in a much larger tapestry of faith and grace. As I left the house, my steps were heavy with the weight of the experience. The memory of that harrowing exorcism would forever be etched in my soul, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows, waiting to seize vulnerable spirits. But it also served as a testament to the power of faith, resilience, and the unwavering belief that even in the face of unimaginable horror, the light of the divine can prevail. In the days that followed, I reflected upon the profound truths I had witnessed. The experience strengthened my resolve as a priest, fueling my commitment to guide those in need, to lend a compassionate ear to the brokenhearted, and to stand firm in the face of spiritual battles that lie ahead. It was a sobering reminder that the fight against evil is ongoing, and the role of faith and spiritual fortitude is more crucial than ever. The memory of that exorcism would forever serve as a beacon, reminding me of the reality of the spiritual realm and the unwavering duty I had undertaken as a priest. And though the battle had been won that day, the war against darkness would continue. For evil knows no bounds, but armed with faith, hope, and the grace of God, I would march forward, ready to face whatever horrors may come my way. I gazed out at the desolate landscape, the vastness of the untouched wilderness stretching out before me. It was as if time itself had forgotten this place, leaving it trapped in a forgotten era. The rugged terrain bore the scars of nature's relentless grip, with gnarled trees twisted towards the sky and moss-covered rocks scattered haphazardly across the floor. The air was heavy with a damp chill, seeping into my bones and sending a shiver down my spine. The scent of earth and decaying leaves mingled with the distant fragrance of pine, creating an intoxicating blend that both invigorated and unnerved me. The only sound that broke the eerie stillness was the occasional hoot of an owl or the haunting cry of a distant predator. As my friends and I ventured deep into the untamed wilderness, the trees grew thicker, forming a canopy that filtered the sunlight, casting a muted glow over the forest floor. Shadows danced and swayed with an ethereal grace, their elongated forms giving rise to a sense of foreboding. We pressed forward, drawn by an insatiable curiosity and the promise of escape from the trappings of modern life. After hours of navigating through dense foliage and traversing treacherous paths, we stumbled upon a clearing, a sanctuary amidst the wilderness. The clearing itself frozen in time, untouched by human presence for years. Tall grasses swayed gently in the breeze, and wildflowers painted the landscape with vibrant hues. At the heart of the clearing stood a weathered cabin, its planks weathered by layers of exposure to the elements. The windows were broken, allowing nature's tendrils to reclaim the interior. The porch sagged under the weight of neglect, creaking as if protesting our intrusion. We approached the cabin cautiously, our footsteps echoing through the silence, the rustling leaves beneath our boots adding a haunting soundtrack to the journey. The door groaned in protest as we pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit interior that seemed frozen in time. Dust particles danced in the slivers of sunlight that filtered through the cracks in the roof, casting eerie shadows on the worn, wooden floor. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of mildew and decay, and a cold draft sent a chill down my spine. The remnants of a forgotten life lay scattered haphazardly. A dilapidated chair, a cracked mirror reflecting a distorted image, faded photographs that seemed to watch us from the walls. A sense of unease settled over us, as if the cabin itself held secrets, whispering its dark history from the depths of our souls. We shared uneasy glances, our imaginations running wild with thoughts of the countless stories this forsaken cabin could tell, stories we may never fully comprehend. Little did we know that this place, this seemingly abandoned sanctuary, was the gateway to our nightmarish encounter. It was here, in the heart of the wilderness, that we would come face to face with the enigmatic cult, their fanaticism seeping into every crevice of the desolate landscape, waiting for unsuspecting souls to stumble upon their malevolent ritual. In the fading light of the day, as darkness settled over the land, we would bear witness to the true horrors that awaited us, forever altering our perception of the untamed wilderness. A palpable shift in the atmosphere sent a shiver down my spine as the sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the clearing into an eerie darkness. The remaining light waned, shadows grew longer, and their presence looming ominously. Unease settled over the group, an unspoken understanding that we had stumbled upon something far more sinister than we could ever imagined. Whispers of a distant past, and the eerie tales of forgotten cults echoed in our mind. Suddenly, a flickering glow pierced the darkness, emanating from the cabin's interior. It danced and swayed like an unholy flame, beckoning us forward with haunting allure. We exchanged wary glances, our instincts warning us of the impending danger, but our morbid curiosity tugged at our hearts, urging us to uncover the truth. Slowly, we approached the cabin, our steps cautious and deliberate. The hushed whispers of the wind and the distant rustling of leaves accompanied our every move, creating an unsettling symphony of sounds. With each creak of the floorboards underneath our weight, the cabin seemed to exhale breath of secrets, a chilling reminder of the mysteries that lay within. As we pushed open the creaking door, the flickering glow intensified, casting an eerie shadow on the dilapidated walls. The room was bathed in sickly yellow light, emanating from a circle of candles arranged meticulously on the floor. Symbols and sigils etched in crimson adorned the walls, their meaning lost to us, but evoking an undeniable sense of dread. In the center of the room, a group of figures dressed in dark robes stood in the solemn silence, their faces concealed by hoods. Their presence exuded a potent mix of fanaticism and malevolence. The air was heavy with anticipation, their unblinking gazes fixed upon us. Fear gripped our hearts, threatening to paralyze us, but deep within a flicker of resilience burned, urging us to resist, to fight against the tides of terror that threatened to engulf us. We were mere witnesses to an unspeakable ritual, a dance with darkness that we were never intended to participate in. With every ounce of strength, we turned and fled, our hearts pounding in our chest, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The cult members erupted into a cacophony of enraged shouts, their fanatical devotion fueling their pursuit. We dashed through the tangled undergrowth, our bodies bruised and battered, desperate to escape the clutches of this nightmarish encounter. Hours passed. We navigated the treacherous wilderness, our resolve pushed to its limits. Exhausted and wounded, we found refuge in a secluded cave, the darkness providing a temporary shield from the horrors we had witnessed. We huddled together shaking with adrenaline and terror, knowing that the memory of that cult encounter would forever haunt us. We reported the incident to the authorities, hoping they would uncover the truth behind the cult and prevent others from falling prey to their malevolent practices. But as the days turned into weeks, it became evident the cult, like a spectre in the night, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers and nightmares. To this day, the memory of that encounter in the heart of the wilderness lingers, a chilling reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected corners of our world. It serves as a cautionary tale, urging others to tread carefully, for sometimes the line between tranquility and terror is perilously thin, and waiting to be crossed by unsuspecting souls. It was a typical evening at home, just like any other. I was in my sitting room engrossed in a book when a faint noise broke the silence. It was distant at first, barely registering in my ears, but as the seconds ticked by, it grew louder and more distinct. Curiosity piqued. I set my book aside and listened intently, trying to decipher the source of the sound. As I strained to make sense of the noise, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. It was the sound of creaking floorboards, slow and deliberate, coming from the direction of the basement. Fear coiled within me as I realized someone was inside our house, descending into the depths below. I tiptoed to my bedroom door, heart pounding in my chest, my senses heightened to an almost painful degree. I knew I had to investigate, to confront whatever threat lurked in the shadows. Steeling myself, I crept down the hallway, every step a calculated risk. Reaching the top of the stairs that led to the basement, I hesitated for a moment, my mind flooded with images of the unknown intruder. My hand tightened around the doorknob. Sweaty palms caused me to slip momentarily before gaining a firm grip. I took a deep breath, then slowly descended into the dimly lit abyss below. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, a flickering light caught my attention. Panic surged through me as I realized that the intruder had found the light switch, bathing the basement in a pale glow. Shadows danced on the walls, distorting the already eerie surroundings. I cautiously followed the sound of the footsteps, my heart racing in my chest like a drumbeat of fear. The air grew colder, each breath a visible puff of mist, as if the presence of the intruder had sapped the warmth from the room. I pressed on, my nerves on edge, desperate to uncover the truth. Then, I saw them. A figure hunched over a workbench, illuminated by a single flickering bulb. It was a man, his face obscured by a hood, his gloved hands busy with tools. My voice caught in my throat, a mix of fear and anger bubbling with me. "What are you doing here?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely more than a whisper. The intruder froze, his head snapping to meet my gaze. I saw a glimmer of something sinister in his eyes, a hunger that sent a chill coursing through my veins. Without uttering a word, he lunged towards me, a knife glinting ominously in his hand. Adrenaline surged through me as I dodged his attack, instincts taking over. I sprinted back up the basement stairs, the sound of his heavy footsteps echoing behind me. Fear fueled my speed. As I reached the safety of the main floor, slamming the basement door shut and bolting it. Breathless and trembling, I dialed the emergency services, reporting the breaking and describing the intruder as best I could. Minutes felt like hours as I anxiously awaited their arrival, my mind filled with the lingering image of the hooded man, his intent and motive still a mystery. The police arrived swiftly, combing through the house and the basement for any trace of the intruder, but he was gone, leaving behind only questions and a lingering sense of violation. My family and I took solace in the knowledge that we were safe, but the incident left an indelible mark on our lives. To this day, the memory of that night haunts me, a reminder of the fragility of our security and the darkness that can lurk beyond the familiar walls of home. It serves as a constant reminder to be vigilant, to trust our instincts, and prioritize our safety. We reinforced our home security, installing alarm systems and reinforced locks, determined to create a sanctuary free from the terrors of that night. But the memory of the hooded intruder still lingers in the back of my mind, an ever-present reminder of the fragility of our sense of security, and as a cautionary tale, a testament to the fact that danger could come knocking on our door when we least expect it. I had always been fascinated by the idea of UFOs, but I never thought I would actually see one. That all changed one summer night when I was out driving in the countryside. I had just come over a hill and was driving down a long, straight stretch of road when I saw something strange in the sky. At first I thought it was a shooting star or a comet, but as I got closer I realized it was something else entirely. It was a disc-shaped object, hovering silently in the air. It was massive, at least 100 feet in diameter, and it glowed with an otherworldly light. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I pulled over to the side of the road and got out of my car, staring up at the object in amazement. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. As I watched, it started to move slowly at first and then with increasing speed. It flew a zigzag pattern, darting back and forth across the sky. I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I realized that this was no ordinary aircraft. It was something else entirely, something not of this world. As I stood there frozen with fear and wonder, the object suddenly stopped in mid-air. It hung there for a moment, as if it was studying me, before it shot off into the distance, disappearing in a flash of light. I stood there for a few minutes trying to process what I had just seen. I felt like I was in a daze, as if the world around me had shifted somehow. When I got back into my car and started driving again, I felt like I was in a dream. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the UFO sighting. I kept replaying it in my mind, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. I scoured the news and the internet, looking for any reports of similar sightings in the area, but I found nothing. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I started to feel like something was off. I started having strange, vivid, and terrifying nightmares about the UFO and the beings that may have piloted it. I started to feel like I was being watched, like there was something out there just beyond my field of vision. I tried to tell myself it was all in my head, and that I was just imagining things, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. And then one night I woke up to a sound outside my window. I got out of bed and walked over to the window, peering out into the darkness. At first I saw nothing, but then I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow, flirting across the yard. My heart pounded in my chest. I ran outside, scanned the darkness for any sign of the UFO, but there was nothing there, just the empty fields and distant stars. As I stood there, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing in around me, I knew that something had changed. The UFO had left its mark on me, and I would never be the same again. It was a quiet night in my small town, and I was coming home from a late shift at work. As I walked towards my apartment complex, I noticed two children standing at the entrance. They looked to be around 10 or 11 years old, and they were dressed in old-fashioned clothing that seemed out of place. As I got closer, I saw their eyes were completely black. It was like looking into an endless void, and it made me feel uneasy. I tried to ignore them and walk past, but they called out to me in unison. "Excuse me, sir. Can you help me? We're lost and need to call our parents." Their voices were soft and innocent, but something about them made my skin crawl. I turned to face them, and noticed that their faces were unnaturally pale, with no hint of emotion or expression. I hesitated, but something about their plea made me feel like I had to help them. I asked them where their parents lived, and they gave me an address that was on the other side of town. It seemed like a strange place for two young children to be wandering around at night, but I decided to take them to a nearby payphone to call their parents. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about these children. They didn't seem to blink, and their movements were almost robotic. The air around us felt heavy and oppressive, like a storm was brewing. When we arrived at the payphone, I handed them the receiver and watched as they dialed the number they had given me. But as they spoke, I noticed that their words were garbled and distorted, like they were speaking a language I couldn't understand. Suddenly, I felt a chill run down my spine. I turned to leave, but as I did, one of the children grabbed my arm. Their grip was surprisingly strong and I couldn't break free. "Please, sir, we need your help. Let us into your car." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something wasn't right and I knew it. I struggled to break free from their grip, but it was like trying to move through quicksand. That's when I heard a voice in my head, a voice that wasn't my own. "Don't let them in," it whispered. "Don't look in their eyes." With a burst of strength, I pulled away and ran as fast as I could. I didn't look back until I was safely inside my apartment complex. The next day I asked around about the children, but no one had seen or heard anything. It was like they never existed. But I knew the truth. I had come face to face with the black-eyed children, and I had narrowly escaped their grasp. The memory of their empty, soulless eyes still haunts me to this day. I checked into the old hotel on the outskirts of town, hoping for a peaceful night's sleep. But as soon as I stepped into my room, I knew something was wrong. The air was thick and heavy, and a chill ran down my spine. The room was small and musty, with faded wallpaper and creaky floorboards. But the worst part were the windows. It overlooked the back alley of the hotel, where the dumpsters and trash bins were kept. The smell of rotting food and garbage wafted in through the window, making me feel sick to my stomach. I tried to ignore this feeling and settled down into bed. But as I drifted off to sleep, I was awoken by the sound of footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, as if someone was pacing around the room. But when I opened my eyes, there was no one there. The footsteps continued through the night and I barely slept a wink, but the worst was yet to come. As morning dawned, I got up to take a shower, but as I turned on the water, I saw a figure in the steam. It was the ghostly image of a young woman, her eyes wide with terror. She was dressed in old-fashioned clothes and her hair was wet and matted. She stared at me for a moment before vanishing into the mist. I tried to shake off the experience and went down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast, but as I ate, I noticed that everyone around me was acting strange. They were whispering and looking over their shoulders, as if they were afraid of something. I asked the waiter what was going on, and he told me the story of the young woman I had seen in the shower. She had been a guest at the hotel many years ago and had been murdered in her room by her jealous lover. Her ghost had haunted the hotel ever since, terrorizing anyone who stayed there. I was terrified and couldn't wait to leave the hotel, but as I packed my bags, I felt a cold breath on my neck. When I turned around, I saw the ghostly figure of the young woman standing behind me. She stared at me with her wide eyes, and I knew I had to leave. I ran out of the hotel as fast as I could, never looking back. I knew I would never forget the terror I had experienced in that haunted hotel. The memory of the smell of garbage and feeling of being watched from the alleyway window would haunt me forever. It was a rainy night, and I was walking home from the underground station. The streets were deserted, and the only sound was the gentle patter of rain on the pavement. As I made my way down the quiet street, I noticed a woman walking a few steps behind me. I didn't think much of it at first, but as I turned the corner onto my street, she was still there keeping pace with me. I tried to speed up and lose her, but every time I looked back, she was still following me. I couldn't get a good look at her face, but her long, black coat and wild, unkempt hair make her look eerie and out of place. As we walked past a dimly lit alleyway, the woman suddenly stepped forward and called out to me. "Excuse me, sir," she said in a raspy voice. "Can you help me? I'm lost and I need directions." I hesitated for a moment, but then I realized I had no choice. I approached her cautiously and asked her where she needed to go. She gave me an address that was on the other side of the city. I gave her directions, hoping to end the encounter as quickly as possible, but as we walked, I noticed that she kept looking over her shoulder as if she was being followed. I couldn't see anyone else around, but her behavior made me feel uneasy. We turned onto a quiet street with a few dimly lit streetlights, and the rain started to pour down harder. Suddenly, one of the streetlights began to blink on and off, casting eerie shadows on the wet pavement. The woman looked up at the street light and turned back to me with a strange expression on her face. "Thank you for your help," she said in a low voice. "I'll be on my way now." I breathed a sigh of relief as she walked away, but as I turned to go in the opposite direction, I saw her disappear down a dark alleyway. I didn't want to get involved any further, so I quickened my pace and tried to put the strange encounter behind me. But as I walked down the deserted street, I realized that the woman was following me again. I could hear the sound of her footsteps growing closer and closer, and when I turned to confront her, I saw her standing in the rain with her wild hair plastered to her face. As she got closer, I could see her eyes seemed to glow in the dark, and her face, pale, looked even more gaunt and terrifying. I didn't want to stick around to find out what she wanted, so I ran as fast as I could back to my house. The memory of that night still haunts me. I don't know who or what that woman was, but the thought of her following me from the underground station through the dark alleyway and into the rain still sends shivers down my spine. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. First things first, huge thank you to Eva Skycastle for making all these drawings in relations to the live stream. It was a really fun thing to do. If you get it, great. If you don't, you can actually listen to it. Link in the description, and also a link to her Instagram if you'd like to check her out. Follow it up in the description for some more cool art and stuff. So thank you again, Eva. Really, really kind of you. Really awesome. So where have I been? Basically, my mother-in-law had to have a mastectomy. We went over to be with her for a while to kind of support her emotionally and, cooking, cleaning and other stuff. Hard with 3 children, by the way. Very tough. But we did it, and we're back home now. And she's recovering well. So thank you everyone for, your thoughts and prayers in the comments, as well as in previous videos regarding this. But yeah, she's better, and I should be back on track now to produce content a lot more frequently. It's just hard to produce content while away with everything going on. I find it, if you're not in your space, it can be a bit challenging. But that's it, really. Hope you enjoy the new content coming soon. Huge thanks, as always, to my members and patrons. Names on screen if you'd like to join their ranks. Links in the description to find out how. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.